How far back do you want me to start the story?
Start from
Right to the beginning.
right from the beginning.
Well, I had my first sitting. I had my first sitting in the house that Timothy Leary had lived in Newton,
Newton, Massachusetts.
in Newton, Massachusetts.
How
But
did
Jim-
you get introduced into Heartfulness?
Jim Metz in Boston was a buddy of mine. I mean, Jim and I got stoned together a lot at that time, and Fred Weinstock. Fred Weinstock was coming through Boston. He'd been to Shahjahanpur, been made a preceptor, decided he was going to come to return to the United States, and was going to convert the world, right? Because he'd had this experience, and he'd been. My understanding from Jim telling the tale is that he'd been in the country for 6 months, and nobody'd started the meditation because
Hard to get people to
right.
start, right?
Everybody was too happy with the marijuana they were getting or whatever. And Fred goes into a health food store because he's got all kinds of special dietary stuff. Who knows? And the woman who takes care of him is a woman named Kitty Wise, who was Jim Metz's girlfriend at that point. And Fred tries to recruit Kitty, but Kitty doesn't want to have anything to do with this kind of stuff. But she says, my boyfriend, Jim, might be interested. Why don't you come to dinner? So Fred comes and starts Jim. And Jim really takes to the meditation because he's been looking. He's tried everything, and this meets one of his criterion in that it's free. There's no money involved. You don't pay anybody. You don't pay anybody for a mantra or anything.
Yeah.
So, and he finds the meditation with Fred helpful. So Jim is into the meditation, and S.S. Ramakrishnan is studying at Rensselaer Polytech. And there's a couple of other abhyasis in the neighborhood, a couple of people who've met Babuji when he was in Boston, when he was in the States in '72. And Jim comes to me and says, he tells me he thinks I should start this meditation. And I protest. I don't know. I want to do it. And Jim says, look, if I said this little blue pill is going to be very interesting, what would you do? And at that point in my life, I would have taken the pill. Right? And he says, all I'm asking you to do is sit still for 30 minutes. So I learned. So I was started in the library of this house where Timothy Leary had once, where Baba Ramdas had gotten his start toward his path.
Oh yeah.
Right. So clearly the house is at there's. I would if we hadn't wiped away the indigenous people who were there before the house was built, this was some kind of a sacred grove or something. Had been. Anyway, so I start the meditation, and I don't do much. I'll go through a week where I'll do the meditation every day, and I wake up on Sunday morning and decide whether or not I want to go to satsang. I mean, this is the way I went to church.
Yeah.
right? Not, and then in
What year was this? What
Pardon?
year was this?
This was 74,
And how old were you at the time?
32, and I was doing a bunch. I was doing a lot. I was a bicycle mechanic. Did a whole lot of things, but didn't have. But I didn't have a trader profession. And somewhere in there, I decided that getting married and having children was going to fix me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But when I got married and had children, I needed the trader profession that I didn't have, so I decided to go to medical school. And halfway through medical school, my domestic situation wasn't working at all, and I blew it up.
Oh.
I kind of had, and my life at that point was in such shambles that I decide that my wife kicks me out of the house, out of the apartment, while she finds a place to live with the kids, and I moved into a bedroom off Jim Metz's kitchen and started the practice for real. Do the meditation in the morning. Do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Systematic.
And at that point, there arrived the invitation for Babuji's visit to Paris, and Jim wants me to go. And I say, I can't afford it. I don't have, $120 for it. And he said, well, I'll loan you the $120. You can pay me back when your medical school loans come in, because you'll briefly have enough cash to do that. You'll miss that cash later in the year. Anyway, and I say, but Jim, that's not the problem. The problem's the Atlantic Ocean. And the day after we have this conversation, I get a letter from a high school best friend who's an expat in London with a round-trip ticket to London to come lick my wounds because of what I'm in the middle of going through. So I get my bicycle, load a bicycle into a bike bag, and I'll take a bicycle to London. I'll take my bicycle to London, and I can bicycle to Paris from London. Yeah, go to the coast, get on a ferry, and right.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in Logan Airport and realize that I have left the brochure telling me with the information about the gathering in my apartment, and all I remember of that is a schematic map of Paris with Versailles out here to the east, out here to the west, right, with a road down that says Orleans, and down along the road to Orleans and Orly Airport, there's a big red circle around something called École Centrale. So I say, okay, with this information, I'm this far along. I've got to follow through.
That's all you had. That's all they had.
That's all I had. And the story's a lot longer than this, right? And I'm going to have to stop recording so I can eat my lunch.
Yeah. You should. Why don't you go ahead and eat? I don't want to hold it up.
The ferry.
Yeah.
The ferry gets into Dieppe about midnight, and I have a bedroll, and I sleep on a commuter bus stop because it's kind of covered. Get up at 6 in the morning and start bicycling north through Normandy, and there's a woman with a one-leg stool heading out from an ancient farmstead. You know, animal housing over here around to milk a cow, right? 12th century. So I start off in the 12th, 13th century, and by the evening, I'm in the equivalent of I'm in the strip malls in the suburbs of Paris, and it's a wonderful bike ride. If it weren't for the fact that I've got a quartering wind that comes straight down the coast from the Atlantic until about 6 in the evening, when I make a sharp left turn, and I've got a tailwind, and I'm heading into Paris and coming out through this road with this line of poplars along it that are out of a Monet, and coming the other direction is an endless line of Citrian people leaving Paris for the coast because it's a Friday evening of the weekend. I stop and basically that night I sleep under some shrubbery on an auto interchange because there's no way I can afford any kind of a hotel around there. Wake up in the morning and there's a park that's right on the edge of Paris where I happen to be, and I splash some water on my face do my meditation, splash the water on my face from a fountain, get it, and there's a woman. I then start asking how to get around, and there's a woman coming along, classic French housewife, with her shopping and a couple of baguettes. And so I asked her, how do I get to the Orleans Gate? Because that's all, and this is the only person who will speak to me in English, and she's speaking idiomatic English. And she says, "Oh, you need a map," and she takes me around to a bookstore so I can get a map of Paris.
There's no Google map at that time.
She leaves me in there doing my shopping, and as I come out of the bookstore, she's returning, and she says, "There's one thing you may need to know. This road goes around Paris, and there's a bus on it, and the bus stops for that are marked with this big C. So if you get onto a road, if you get off of this road and onto a road where there are no more bus stops like that, backtrack until you find one, and that about halfway into the morning that happened. So I get around and I figure I'm going to go to a public phone booth. Get out of there were still telephone directories in those days, and I'll look up a Col Central and go there. Do you have any idea how many Écoles Centrales there are in Paris? If you can teach it, there's an École Centrale in Paris to teach it. Right? It's the center of the French world. So I'm sitting there, and the phone system starts shutting down because it's a Saturday in August, and everything is going to close at noon because Who's and I'm thinking I should call Jim Metz. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I'm sitting, and finally I say, okay, there's going to be a couple of thousand people show up. The police the police in the town will have to know they're there. So I will just go to all of the police stations until I find the police station that can tell me about that. And I've got the map in my lap, and I can't tell you how many times I've stared at this. And suddenly it appears, it's almost like it hadn't been there before. But suddenly down along the road to Orleans, there's École Centrale for mechanics, basically mechanics and industry, French A&M, and I decide that I will go there. And I will go there, and if that's not it, I'll do my survey. And that was the place that the Europeans had made arrangements for the gathering.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was, and I did eventually have a sitting that Babuji gave a group sitting to us. We were sitting he was in one of the dormitories, and the dormitories were organized with a kind of central gathering space, and the halls were like, so Babuji was not giving regular sittings because he was too sick. So they announced one afternoon that Babuji is going to give a sitting. And they haul us all down and load us into the hallways of this dormitory. And I'm sitting against the wall. And meditation starts, and at some point in the meditation, I have this feeling. It's right here. My anatomy is different from what the diagram is, because this is where I felt it. You know how if you stuck if you get a rose thorn cut stuck, you know, it hurts when you get it stuck in, but if you leave it alone, it's a nuisance. But when you pluck it out, you get that instant. Well, that's what it was like. It was boom right here, and it was like I'd been kept asking. I wanted a physical visit, and the message I got, it's going to takes a while to tell it, but it didn't take a while to hear it. It was like that. Was you talk about spirituality, and you sit around and basically whine about not having the physical presence. If you believe in the spiritual communication, act like it. Behave as if you behave with what you believe. What's this wall to me? So stop demanding. This is not about the material. This is not about the material. If you're either behave like you know that, or go do something else with your time.
You don't need the physical proof.
Right, and it was such an incredible. There was such an incredible rush for the rest of the day. I mean, it was. And whenever I give a sitting, I mean, from time to time, I'm reminded with that physical sensation. And Babuji says in Whispers, he says, all masters have doubted. All masters have had their moments of doubt. So don't worry about yours. that comes with the territory. It comes with the things get tough. Well, persist. Nothing happens if you don't persist. So there are times, and when that happens, I return to that physical. I have that right there.
That you can never forget.
Never. And it's the other thing. The lesson is that you always have whatever you need. I mean, I didn't need anything. I didn't need the brochure because I will see that you get there.
You are meant to be there. You are meant to be there. You found a way to get there.
Right. Yeah.